Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with San Francisco jazz pianist Clifford Lamb and record producer Jeff Weber on the 2021 CD Blues Hues, New Orleans. Following the success of his previous live two-track recording, Blues Hues, Clifford and Jeff teamed up again to pursue their concept of the jazz mashup, the process in which a composition is stirred into an existing jazz work to offer a new perspective on both history and culture. Despite the COVID-19 restrictions, they took their show on the road to record this album in the storied birthplace of jazz. It's a great story, great album. Enjoy.
Okay, this is Jeffrey Weber, my producer.
Hi, how are you?
Hey, good afternoon. Hey, thanks for joining us here on Neon Jazz.
I'm pleased. Anytime Clifford calls to do something with Neon Jazz, just count me in.
Right on. I love it, man. So let's talk about Blues Hues, the newest 2021 CD. Respectively from each of you, the timing is odd because of COVID-19 and everything that's going on in the world. It's one of the only real direct ways that you can communicate with the fans these days. So before we get into the artistic construction of the album, talk about the timing.
We had a plan to do a series of recordings, live to 2 tracks, with no mixing, no editing, no overdubbing, in specific cities that had an amazing musical history. And Clifford came up with the notion that New Orleans should be the kickoff city. And the pandemic, as it has done to all of our lives, kind of ripped through it without thinking of consequences and forced us to make some serious decisions. If I'm not mistaken, Clifford, we've rescheduled that recording a couple of times, but we took it upon ourselves to first be safe and be careful and slip in and provide income to some amazing musicians, an amazing studio, and some people in our industry who were suffering greatly. And the record, we believe, came out spectacularly well. It gave us a chance to develop new relationships and work in a medium that we love to work in, real music played by real musicians in real time. Wouldn't you say, Clifford?
It was a great time to come over there. It was actually an opportunity for us that you would not normally get because of the scarcity of recordings and work for people. We were actually able to secure these people to record with us because of the pandemic. So we were fortunate in that regard because all of those people were able to record without any difficulty whatsoever. So it was just a question of us finding the right time to get over there in conjunction with the pandemic and the availability of travel or no travel. And so when we found the right time, we got over there. We made the date with the musicians, and we went over there and recorded right over there in New Orleans at the Esplanade studio over there, which is an amazing. It was originally a church converted into a recording studio, and they have tremendous equipment there. The only thing really missing over there, to be honest with you, is just the lack of people in the streets when we got over there. But aside from that, everything was intact, and it was a great time to record.
It's a very convenient room for us. We do a lot of things acoustically, so Esplanade was suitably set up with specific rooms for drums and other instruments, which allow Clifford's piano to sing in the main room. So we had all that wonderful space where the sounds could resonate, and had a very decent microphone collection. I'll tell you the truth, the configuration of the studio is unique. Because it was a church, the control room was actually on the second floor overlooking the studio below. I'll tell you the truth, Clifford, I could sure use an elevator after going up and down those stairs all day long.
So what do you ultimately want the listener to get from this experience? I mean, there is a sonic expectation that both of you have from a very different point of view from the listener, but ultimately, how do you want them to feel?
The notion of this, let's just say the narrative of this recording, is to select music that have roots in the city specifically, and Clifford would do his own arrangement of that song, but at the same time create a brand new song that has been deeply inspired by that song, and mashing the two together to create, in essence, a third song. So for one of the few times in jazz, this is a mashup of specific songs that are beloved by the city and pretty much everyone else too, everywhere else. But also the mashup concept has not really been used in jazz before. So we're taking a true deep dive into the history and the music of that city. And Clifford finds a song that inspires him. He'll do his version of it, arrangement-wise, and create a brand new song as a reflection of that song, thus creating a new song by the intermixing of those two songs together. And it's not just a quote. It's not, that we're not just quoting a theme. It's a real integration. And to Clifford's credit, it's not that easy to do effectively. And then when you add the live 2-track element on top of it, where there is no forgiveness, it's either yes or no. I mean, if it's no, we have to do it again. But there is the energy of that moment. There is capturing a performance rather than manufacturing one. And very few people have the confidence at the outset to do this. Clifford is one of those guys. And thankfully, the musicians that we were fortunate enough to hire felt the same way.
Just to add to what Jeff's saying, just to talk a little bit more about the songs themselves were somewhat idiomatic. For example, when we did Mama, what was it? Jeff, help me with this. The Zuzu Mama song, which is Dawn song. That was kind of a comment on a hoodoo versus hoodoo and voodoo, which is something I integrated into a song that I wrote, and it's kind of that particular district. We were trying to capture that concept about preserving hoodoo and voodoo just to celebrate it, and by doing that, creating a homage to that particular part of their life. So what we're doing in essence is we're taking an idiomatic aspect of New Orleans, but we're also integrating a social issue into that at the same time. So the music was part of it, and then we would try to take it a step further by integrating the social context into that.
And then we went out to eat and figured we'd just move to New Orleans and get fat and we'd all be happy.
Absolutely. That's the point right there. So, when everybody's starting to kind of wake up and get back to live music, when that happens, New Orleans is the quintessential city for live music. When you get back on stage and we get back in the crowd, what do you hope we realize about the power of live music when it all comes back?
Well, like it always is, except I think it brings it home a little more because I think we've all gone through changes around the pandemic. But mostly it's just the transformative power of music, and to take, theme-based music and try to somehow communicate that with the audience and let them participate in, that thought process and hopefully embrace it just through the live performance of what we do.
I think that music in this time will be used to elevate each of us and elevate the culture of the city that we would be presently in, because after being without essentially each other for so long, the power of community as represented by the emotional impact of music, when you combine all those things, the experience of being together, that's one part of the equation. But then you add a type and style and of music that everybody loves. You have no choice to create new memories. And right now, people are they're kind of just preening to get to concerts. That excitement, that social interaction with the music is experiential and emotional, and it's compact, and yet it's very expansive, and I don't think there'll be any lack of sales at dispensaries in the near future.
You know, the world at large, and especially musicians, have been in arts all over the place, have been hit really hard by this pandemic. How do you see the world of jazz emerging as a stronger organism when we get back? You know, the community has had to do a lot of things, a lot of adapting, and it's already a strong community, but how do you see all of that returning in a stronger way?
Well, again, it's like you were talking about before, you know, the Christian McBride, for example, he does a lot of social theme-based music. I think because of what we've gone through, I think the suffering that we've gone through the pandemic has brought a lot of the issues of the day closer to us because we're no longer reading them in the paper. We're actually living them, and I think that reflects in the music as well. I think if you look at what the market has for music, even though I believe that what I'm doing is unique and, you know, I think it offers a way to experience, you know, some of the social ills of our society, I think you'll find that many of the musicians are doing similar things in that they're talking more about what they've experienced through the pandemic, and that is loss of life property. There's been death and many manifestations of racism and ageism, and just the various things that we've talked about much more in an abstract sense have now become more of an everyday reality. So I think it's natural that will reflect on the new music.
I think the pandemic has forced each of us to pull the Band-Aid off and to see what's really underneath. Things that, like Clifford said, that we read about, we're now experiencing firsthand. So I expect a very rich community of new compositions with, social integration and extraordinary, musicianship and deep-rooted compositions because of the pandemic. I think that there is no going back to what is or was normal. I think that we're going to dip our foot into what I call the new abnormal, because from here on out, everything changes.
I agree. Let's say you come to Kansas City, you present this album to a live audience, and you have to come up with a way of pitching this and enticing somebody that's looking for live music to come to this show, one of our premier shows. What are you going to say? How are you going to get them in to see this performance?
Well, each one of the themes speak for themselves. It's a really good question. And each one of these themes, like Quench, for example, which is the second song, it talks about Mr. Homer Plessy. Homer Plessy, as you may be familiar, was 1/8 African American, and he was not allowed to marry his lady, and then later on that was overturned. The people that live in the different areas are aware of some of this history. What I'm trying to do is put light onto the history of what happened in New Orleans and then replicate that in different cities. But those themes translate to just about every city. Every city has its own history, has its own lineage. So just by talking about what's in these themes will give people a chance to reflect upon their own lives. And by doing that, it gives them the chance to experience the music, not just for the music, but for what the history of music offers.
I think that music is in essence a fabulous communicator because it offers enjoyment, it offers a deep-rooted thought process, and the ability to communicate almost instantaneously with someone else who shares similar perspectives.
Beautiful. Gentlemen, thank you for taking a minute out to talk about this album and the world and the return. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us. Good to talk to you
Absolutely.
again.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest cats in New Orleans, San Francisco, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to both to Clifford and Jeff for their time, story, and history. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino in the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.